Do you find it hard to maintain relationships because of your ADHD? If so, you're not alone. Dr. Murphy, David Murphy, Coach Murphy, over 15 or 20 years of working with students and families and parents and adults with ADHD, I've come to share 5 helpful strategies to help you improve on your goals as it relates to relationships. And this can be as common as developing relationships in middle school to also developing meaningful long-term relationships that might lead into life partners or marriage. The increased challenges related to relationships can stem from the common challenges related to ADHD related difficulties such as problems with communication, impulsivity, forgetfulness, and sometimes just managing responsibilities and expectations that can sometimes play out in more long-term relationships like life partners and marriage and families. Strategy number 1 is practice active listening. Now, if you're a college student heading off to college for the first time and you have a new roommate and you're trying to really set great first impressions and develop a meaningful relationships right away. This can play into college, but also in any type of new friendships. Active listening is so important. It's when you just spend time actively listening and attending to what someone else is saying and trying to understand their perspective, trying to get to know their strengths, their curiosity, their personalities, asking probing questions to better understand what they're talking about and the information behind the information. And so you can do this a couple of different ways. A few tips for you to try. One is summarize what someone says. Is a way of letting them know that not only are you listening, actively listening, but you're going to try to reframe what they said to summarize that moment. And ask clarifying questions. Let that person know you really care. One way to do that is to ask questions about what they're talking about, what they're saying. And that really develops a deeper understanding of who that person is. And then what can be really important in conversations is eye contact. And in the distractibility world of videos and games and screens, active listening and eye contact go hand in hand. So try those 3 and try to hold back on the impulsivity to speak. Hold back on the impulsivity to multitask. Hold back on the impulse to look distracted. There's nothing, more damaging the first impressions than to look like you don't care. So active listening is super important right away. Strategy number 2, as you start to really nurture some meaningful relationships, it will be important at some point to be open and honest about your medical condition, ADHD, as it relates to you. And being transparent around that you're not intentionally trying to be forgetful or trying to minimize the relationship by having poor eye contact. You can be open around these tendencies that might make it harder for you to engage, harder for you to remember, harder for you to develop or follow through on maybe neurotypical like standards. Because it's important for the person to know that you do care and that you are very committed to the relationship, and these things can happen. And by doing that, you can build a bridge of understanding and build a bridge of communication, and more importantly, come up with real thoughtful interventions and strategies between the two of you, especially if you're looking at a lifelong partner or if it's a marriage conversation. You have to have real transparency and make the implicit explicit and develop clear lines of communication and support. And that can be really empowering to the relationship, but also to you with ADHD. What's important to note in that strategy is to not use your medical condition as an excuse, like I'm forgetful and that's just the way I am. That may not be what you want to be the message, as opposed to letting someone understand that you're trying and maybe there's better ways to remember and to not forget important things in the relationship, like, I don't know, birthdays, or the fact that you were supposed to go to the drugstore and pick up the medication today and you didn't because you forgot. And how an excuse may not be as meaningful, but understanding, right? Understanding of the condition and the tendencies, but also becoming in the relation more accountable and more empowered to build strategies to support the relationship, but also you. As you focus on your relationships, you also have to focus on you, right? And you have to understand that for you to be the best version of yourself in a relationship, it may be important for you to set up clear boundaries so that you also can find time to get the support you need in order to be the best version of yourself. So setting boundaries is really about protecting you and maybe your own tendencies. For example, it may be hard for you to be effective as a mom or a dad if things are coming at you last minute, right? And how that can be bombardment creates a lot of emotion overwhelm. and how your children, but also your spouse, needs to understand that you need things planned out and you need people to give you a heads up when something's coming down the road if they can, or to give you a heads up that we need to sit down and talk about something and to not hit me last minute with some overwhelming news, because that triggers me and sends me into kind of a spiral. Some practical advice might be specific about your needs, such as when you need a downtime, right? And when you need to recharge, and how you would handle last minute planning or decision making. Clearly communicate your boundaries in specific ways. And as you get to know yourself and your tendencies, that self-evaluation, self-reflection allows you to then communicate who you are, and for you to be the best version of yourselves, these are the boundaries I need in place. And maybe a third advice would be encourage mutual understanding and encourage mutual respect for each other in the space that you have. That might be around how do we address common areas and what you might need in terms of your space and your spouses, but even in friendships where you have shared college dormitory, that's super hard to establish brand new relationships and clear boundaries of communication. With ADHD, it becomes even more important to feel empowered to have those conversations. Strategy number 4, it can be really hard for people with ADHD to stay connected in a meaningful way. What that can look like is forgetfulness, just forgetting to respond to the text messages, forgetting to reach out to your friends when it's their birthday, or forgetting to schedule that outing on Friday night, and how that forgetfulness can lead to shame and guilt, which can then lead to just not wanting to address your friends on those problems, and then you find yourself even more disconnected. So the best thing to do is to have a strategy that you can lean on, even more than one, but primarily focus on a strategy that can help you be the best version of yourselves, to remember important things, to remember how to manage the relationships that you care about. So whether it's time with your spouse by scheduling dinner on a Friday night, or going for a walk consistently every morning or every third morning and putting that in your calendar and setting up reminders to make sure that you and your partner have that quality time, right? And when your college roommate makes a request of you to do something at a certain time and you miss that event and how that damages the relationship, so gotta have some strategy like a calendar where you can put things quickly into it, or sticky notes where you can put it on your bedside table, you can put it on your computer screen monitor, or put something in your phone into a Google Keep type app. Doesn't matter what it is, but you need a strategy to help you remember things as it relates to your relationship. And that not only builds your confidence and your connection into the relationship, but builds and empowers the relationship itself. Give it a try and stay consistent in it, and that's going to be really important to you and your relationships. Strategy number 5 is really about seeking help, seeking support, seeking external resources to allow you to not only tackle the first 4 strategies, but to help work through that self-awareness process to become more clear and accountable to who you are and your tendencies, so that you can relate to that and build stronger forms of communication with your partner. In marriage at EEC, we call it couples coaching, and it's dynamic because maybe the couples are married, maybe the couples have kids, and maybe the kids have ADHD, but you have to have real clear, explicit roles and responsibilities, communication channels around dealing with the day-to-day, and you have to have a loving, supportive connection to allow the couple to be the best versions of themselves, and therefore spread that connection out into their children and into the lives they're trying to live and build together. You can work with a therapist in a similar way. It's a dynamic. From a coaching model, we're always about moving forward in life and building the tools and strategies in order to make tomorrow even better than today, and to achieve those short and long-term goals that maybe the executive dysfunction is getting in the way, or the ADHD is making it inconsistent in how we're managing our relationships together. So you can look at those supports as building a foundation for you and your partner and your relationships so that you can thrive. So in conclusion, when you think about these 5 strategies and what they might mean to you, maybe one of them resonates, right? Maybe one of them is something, I gotta get better at communicating my own needs to my partner. So I'm creating my own boundaries and bumpers and space to reset, recharge, refuel, so then I can re-engage in the relationship in a meaningful way, versus having those feelings of resentment or anger and moments where you unleash on your partner and you feel so guilty afterwards, right? So You got to be proactive, and that's why these strategies are so important to take ownership of and learn how to work through it. Hopefully this helps. Please reach out to me if there's anything in here that resonates with you and you want help through the coaching process. We're here to help. And before I go, a good resource for those people that are really trying to move into a more empowered phase of communication relationships is try the ADHD effect on marriage. Now, you may not be married. You may be looking at a long-term plan for marriage, but try that resource. It's by Melissa Orlov. It's a helpful book resource on building those skills or empowering you to have strategies and start to nurture. It all starts with a sense of self-awareness and feeling empowered to be the best version of yourselves, good and bad, right? Taking it all together and saying, yeah, I have these tendencies. They suck when they get in the way. So I need to have a relationship that allows me to take into account those tendencies and supports that are needed so that I can then engage in a relationship in a really important and meaningful way. Hopefully this helps. See you next time.